Hello. Thank God it's Tuesday. And the conversation that I just explained to our audience in Russian is about what has been happening in 770 in the Lubavitcher headquarters in the Rabbi's synagogue. And you've been very close with the rabbi. You've been his translator. You're a huge part of Chabad Lubavitch, a very prominent member of Chabad Lubavitch. And I didn't really want to have this conversation last Tuesday. Everything came out on Monday. We could have done that, but I was hoping that it would not gain the momentum that it did, and it got a lot of momentum. Main Street media doesn't cover a lot of news, but this one they had a field day with. There's a lot of misinformation, kind of speculations, and a lot of different things that have been circulating in the last week. So we prefer to hear things from the source, especially the wise source that we have access to once a week, which is you, Rabbi Friedman. And we would like to understand what is going on, and most importantly, what lesson should we derive from everything that is going on, especially that has been coming out like a week, 2 weeks actually before Chabad, which is a huge day, which is Rabbi's Day. This is when Rabbi Schneerson became the rabbi of the Lubavitcher movement.
Oh, the Rebbe became Rebbe in 1950.
Oh, okay.
So it's been a few years. It is so crazy. Like, we've always wanted publicity. But not this kind of publicity.
No.
And the way this story caught on and the attention on 770, it's not normal. And it's very similar to all the attention is on Israel. There are problems all over the world, but nobody cares. Everybody's focused on Israel. As if something in Israel is earth-shattering, or I guess that tells us something. The world is obsessed with Jews. Why? We're a tiny, insignificant minority. Why is the world obsessed with us? It must be because we have something to tell the world that we're not telling them. Anyway, so what happened there was the news broke that there are secret tunnels being dug under 770. Well, just a few little details are off. Number one, it's not a tunnel. Number two, it's not under 770. Number three, it's not a secret. It was never meant to be a secret. Here's what's really going on. There's been a lot of talk that the shul, where people both learn and pray and daven, is too small. It can't handle the crowds, especially on Yom Tov. So there's been talk about expansion. The only way or room for expansion is towards the back. So 770 faces Eastern Parkway, and the back of it faces Union Street. So that would be the area of expansion, to build backwards from Eastern Parkway till Union. A bunch of guys decided that they're impatient and that the expansion should have started already, so they went ahead and they started the expansion. But they didn't rip up the walls of 770. They began from Union Street, excavating towards 770. So it was not a secret. It was meant to encourage the community to expand and to build. And Of course, it was illegal. We didn't know whether they had actually some engineers making sure that it's not going to bring down the whole building. So it was very wild and irresponsible and so on. People who have no authority, who have no rights, and so it had to be stopped. But it wasn't a tunnel. It was expanding the basement of the buildings on Union to reach the level, a basement level of 770. So it was like a corridor that they were making, not a tunnel under 770.
Rabbi Friedman, but how would that help expand? I mean, I'm just a little confused. If this is a basement, it's not going to expand the actual place where people pray. It's something under. How would that expand it?
Well, 770 itself, not the original building, but the shul is a basement. You got to go down a few steps from the street. So they wanted to expand it. I don't think they actually intended to build the building. They just wanted people to wake up and get the job done. This group, by the way, it started a long time ago. It started with the idea that Hasidim can dictate to the Rebbe who he should be, what he should do. And they decided that we can force the Rebbe to become Mashiach. If we insist that he's Mashiach, we'll make him into Mashiach. Which is a wild and crazy attitude. And it did a lot of damage and a lot of harm. But it started this mentality, we're the boss, we need to do whatever we think is right, and that's how we're going to make things better. I mean, the attitude is great. The self-confidence is admirable, but it's totally crazy. Misplaced, misguided. And then, of course, it gets a little violent. And so arrogance leads to chutzpah. Chutzpah leads to misbehavior. And that eventually ends up being violent. So this group has got to be disciplined, has got to be restrained from their crazy thinking, that whatever good idea you have a right to act on it without any authority, without asking.
Does this group have a leader?
They've lost control. No, it doesn't. So here's an interesting thing. If we needed a model for what would Mashiach be like? A human being? A great human being? A very smart human being? A very influential human being? If you wanted a model, the Rebbe was a perfect model. Or the best we've ever seen. And so, when people wanted to explain what Mashiach is, to make it realistic, they would say somebody like the Rebbe. Well, some people took that very literally and said, not like the Rebbe, it's the Rebbe. And no matter how many times the Rebbe objected, they kept promoting and pushing and writing and waving flags. And one of the mistakes was the argument, the justification that they used was that the Rebbe didn't want to become Rebbe back in 1950, but we pressured and we demanded and eventually we forced him to become Rebbe. So now, if we insist long enough, we can force him to become Mashiach. I'm not even sure what that means. I mean, is it up to an individual whether he wants to be Mashiach or not? But that was the rationalization, which is wrong on two counts. Number one, when you pressure the Rebbe to become Rebbe, he was just a private citizen. Once you proclaim him Rebbe, now there's no pushing, push a Rebbe. It doesn't make any sense. Somebody said to the Rebbe, at dollars, the Rebbe should take 10,000 Chassidim and move to Israel. So the Rebbe said, you call me Rebbe and then you tell me what to do? If I'm a Rebbe, you listen to me. So that's one mistake. The second mistake is anybody who knows the Rebbe, or who knew the Rebbe even as a teenager, you cannot force the Rebbe to do anything. In 1950, when they pressured the Rebbe and so on, and finally he accepted the leadership, you think it was because you pressured him? There's no pressuring, just the Rebbe's character. And besides being a Rebbe, he doesn't get intimidated. You can't force him or pressure him. When Chassidim were sincere enough, and their interest was real, and they accepted his leadership in a healthy and honest way, then the Rebbe agreed, because it was the right thing to do, not because he was intimidated by the pressure. So you're misreading, you're misunderstanding the Rebbe completely. When Golda Meir was prime minister, the Rebbe was very outspoken about his disappointment that Israel keeps making concessions, and that every time there's a war, Israel accepts a ceasefire and the war never ends. And the Rebbe was very vocal about it. Golda Meir was annoyed with all the criticism. So she sent a message to the Rebbe that if he doesn't stop criticizing Israel, his Chassidim will not be allowed to visit soldiers, they won't be allowed to have tefillin booths at the Kotel, and so on. So the Rebbe mentioned it at a Fabringen, and he said, I have a strange nature. My nature is, if I'm told that I can't do something, I want to do it more. So don't threaten me. So the whole thing was just very immature, premature, and it had a terrible effect. People who used to respect Chabad as a responsible, realistic organization that moving Judaism and the Jewish people in a good direction, and all of a sudden they're dancing around with flags, and people said, oh, so you're not really a responsible organization. It was terrible. It is terrible. But, Chabad is very tolerant, even of its own. So somehow this went on for 30 years, and everybody knew and spoke about how wrong it is, but nobody actually did anything about it, and now maybe they will. So what do we learn from this? It's a balancing act. On the one hand, the Rebbe tells us over and over and over, it's all up to you. You have to bring Mashiach, not sit and wait for Mashiach. What we do makes the difference. And the sooner we do it, the better, etc., etc. And of course, that's true. On the other hand, if you just decide to do what you want to do because you think that that's how you bring Mashiach, that's pure nonsense. It's irresponsible. And it does the opposite. It delays the coming of Mashiach because it causes division and arguments and disagreements. Not a good thing. So how do we balance this? How do you have, on the one hand, full responsibility? Don't sit and sing, "We believe in Mashiach." Do something. Bring Mashiach. And on the other hand, who are you to decide what to do to bring Mashiach? It's a huge question about Judaism in general. The whole idea is to serve God, to do for God what God needs. Oh, you're going to do what God needs? Who do you think you are? So we have these two sides of the coin that seem to be a contradiction. There are those who actually are impressed by these guys and their initiatives. They think it's admirable. Because, yeah, we're supposed to do something to bring Mashiach.